It's Tuesday, and this is Trekland, and we're live. That one cage line. Is it about Pike or about 1964? Today on Trekland Tuesdays Live. With me, Dr. Trek, Larry Nemechek, coming at you right here, as always, every Tuesday from the heart of Trekland through Portal 47. For the big picture, some clarity and sanity in most things Star Trek. Welcome back, everybody, for another Tuesday session here with all of our TTLers. If you're new to the show, hey, welcome. Jump in here on the chat, introduce yourself. We've got a great group. I will get to the chat in a little bit. I'm going to get off on a soapbox theme here, a topic. We'll take a quick break for the live folks, and I'll be back with some interesting paired analytics ratings. And then full bore diving into your chat and what everybody wants to talk about. Specifically, if you want to ask me a question, we'll get to that. But it's great. I'm coming to you from a really busy Tuesday. Not only did we have overlapping Star Treks last week, but right now it seems to be tour season. Right now, as we speak, all this week are going to be some of the high donors to the Voyager documentary, and there's like 40 or 50 of them coming in for some special tours that the Voyager documentary people set up that are one-off actor meet you at a location place. And some dinners at night with some of the actors. So it's perk week for the Voyager documentary here live in LA. And I'm going to lead a couple of those this week and see people at a couple of dinners. Maybe we've got folks in the audience right now. Are you in the chat room and you're a part of that? So maybe you're excited. It seems like the tours are exploding all over, which is why I'm really thrilled to remind you that if you're going to Trek Vegas, there is a day tour with Geek Nation Tours where we go out to the Valley of Fire, an hour northeast of Las Vegas, right up the 15. It's where Kirk died in Generations. I call it the Kirk Memorial Tour. But there's some goofy, funky Star Trek things out there besides the film site that we also take in. It's a lot of fun. Maybe you've seen photos. And also, I'm really thrilled and excited. This is 2/3 of the way to already making. I only needed 6 minimum. I've got 4 people. The Gene Roddenberry Great Birds Origins Tour. It's a life tour of life places around LA. So go to my website, larrynemechek.com. Find out all about that. I'm about to upgrade the page a little bit. But yeah, it's tours. And then next spring, we're going to have tours around the cruise departure. I'm working on that right now. And then, of course, next July, a year from July, is the return of the big multi-day West Coast away mission. It's LA and San Francisco next year with Geek Nation Tours, myself leading it. And this is just the beginning of some of the familiar faces we're going to have with us. It's going to be a little bit more celeb-studded. I mean, I think the experience and my wonderful insight is enough. But no, there's some places where it's such a great add-on to have. And in this case, it's actually actors who have something to do with the place we're going to. They're not just there to be supportive. So gosh, tours. I've already done 2 Trekland Treks, just individual private tours this year so far. Last week ago Friday, or last Friday on the lot. Again, amazing. Hottest day of the year, of course. So yeah, and that's just in the tour nook of the words. We've got books coming. We've got everything Star Trek is booming, including, of course, what's like on the screen. And last week, the chitters, the Twitters, the Facebookers, everything was full up of a lot of commentary. I think people generally were happy with Strange New Worlds. I think they're still, generally happy with Picard, although they're still lukewarm about it. I'm generally happy with everything. When I have a red flag go off, my brain immediately goes into smooth it out, fix it mode, because what else are you going to do? Think maybe in 20 years when they come out with the 5J Pink Ray edition, somebody will go in and fix it if it's a visual. If it's canon and conceptual, though, it's a little hard to do that. So, I feel like right now with all I'm seeing online, it's the greatest time ever for not just one, but everything on my hashtag list, which aren't necessarily converted or connected. But it's like everything of my hashtag sayings is in play. Led off with, of course, texture, not trivia. which is what I want to talk about today. Use the universe means it's not fan service unless it's just really fan service porn, if it's obviously. Otherwise, use the universe, right? Um, Canon in a vacuum is about the canon we use when it's not on screen and it's good enough to go by a pecking order, maybe by creatives, by established authors, creators. And then maybe when it comes time for it to be on screen, someone will go use that, or maybe, hey, they'll come up with something brand new, and your former canon in a vacuum is now been superseded by something that's on screen. Looking at you, as confusing as it was, Hobus subspace shockwave supernova. God, what else? Yeah, Prime is not hard. The Prime universe is not hard to keep up with, and also canon is not scary. It's for all the folks whose just eyes cross and think canon is a weight around your neck, when it can be the best thing ever for coming up with more texture, not trivia. And that's what I think we've been seeing on Strange New Worlds and even Picard. So I can tell you, we did this last week. We did this with I know, the April recon casting. Hey, nobody was even talking about Chief Kyle. Chief Kyle, which Chief Kyle? It's 9 years before we see the Kyle of the original series. 9 years, 7 years, 7 years. Lots can happen in 7 years. Lots of folks have different names, similar names. But there was one moment in my Twitter feed that kept popping up that was really interesting. And it was like a 55-year throwback at times, much less what was just going on last week. And that's what I'm talking about here. You know what I mean? That one line in The Cage. Is it about Pike or is it about 1964? And you know what I'm talking about. And it seems to have gotten a whole new re-airing this year in some quarters, at least in the quarters that frequent Larry Nemechek on Twitter, where people goes back to the moment on the bridge where Pike, Jeffrey Hunter's Pike, is kind of huff-hawing about his new yeoman, who is not a yeoman, is a yo woman, and she's a little awkward because she's young. And he says, "I don't know if I'll ever get used to a woman on the bridge." And it's almost a setup for Magel's number one, to whip around and give him a dirty look or a confused look or a hurt look. And then Pike very quickly says, what does he say? No offense, number one, something to that effect. And then we move on. And it's amazing how when sleeping dogs lie and then they rise up again. No, it's people are going back to point to that line. Obviously, people obviously talk about, well, here's the debate. Like I said, does that show that Pike is sexist and a throwback? Because now we are fleshing out the time. Are we fleshing out the time with Strange New Worlds, or are we retconning it? I don't think we have to do this. I know a lot of people are somewhere they're a little down. They're apologetic. They are sympathetic. Oh, well, we can't change 1964, but we can sure produce a new show today. Well, I agree with all that. I'm just saying, I don't know that there's a need to. Now, look, years ago, people have even pointing this out. They talk about framing Star Trek with that line and then going to the old Janice Lester chestnut about your world of starship captains doesn't include me or women. Well, 20, 30 years ago, I headcanoned, if that's what we say now. I made peace with myself that she is obviously a sociopathic, not well person. And the only way she can explain her failures, both romantically and career-wise, is to blame misogyny. Now, yes, we've retconned, and even people would point to Captain Hernandez in Archer's time and say, well, this is obviously not true. And you could come back and say, well, that was our Starfleet. It wasn't the combined Federation force. Now, to be true, there were no, and I've even looked at extras in the background. I don't believe there were any captains, much less flag rank women in the original series, sadly. But we can jump right into the motion picture very quickly. There are women and captains in the background, and even though it's in the novelization, Kirk's 2-year marriage partner that Nagura maneuvered to get him to maneuver him to where he was as chief of ops. Lori Siani or Siana. Lori, I always want to say it wrong. Lori Siana, who is supposedly the woman who dies with Sonak in the transporter, if you read Gene's novelization. If you also read Gene's novelization, you have a perfect excuse to why we're abandoning the original visual look of the original series, because it was the dramatized, maybe adventures meant to portray Kirk's adventures to the mass public. That's a whole other story. We've talked about it. I'm just saying as a reminder. But no, obviously we have since massively retconned. And the fact that we see the captain of the Saratoga, the old Saratoga in Star Trek IV, maybe for the first time as an actual woman on the bridge, the fact that it was Madge Sinclair, who in another life is Geordi's mom. That's kind of retconning it. Although, you know, Star Trek IV in the trilogy is another 15 years later, 14, 15 years later. So you could say, oh, no, there was a massive reform, a feminist reform to allow women to be captains and above in between the original series and Star Trek IV in that 15-year gap. The other big reform being, of course, getting rid of pastel uniforms, which look gorgeous, by the way. Give them another chance. Give everything another chance in the art palette of motion picture when you see the 4K director's edition now. You never get that blasé gray blue feeling if you're watching it on a half decent system, home or in a theater. But I'm digressing. People look at the Janice Lester line, and I just go back to the fact she was deluded, a sociopath, psychopath, and she's justifying her personal failures by spreading it to be a massive social issue. Other than that, we have no outright, we don't have any visual proof otherwise, but we have nobody criticizing or commenting on, well, that'll be the day when a woman's a captain. Nothing like that ever happened. So let's just hold tight to that. In fact, the only thing that rears up a little bit of misogyny, aside from, yes, I know, a lot of the subtextual just writing of some of the shows, some of the moments, some of the Kirk moments, I know the 60s-ness pours through there, but at least as far as overtness, this Cage line of Pike's is the closest that comes to it. But I would say to you, number one, haha, no pun intended, Pike is really depressed right now, as we know. In fact, it takes a while. It took me until a couple of years ago to realize, until we saw Anson's joyous Pike coming aboard Discovery, which did feel basically right. It didn't feel out of step at all with Jeff Hunter's, because remember, what we see of Pike in the cage until the very last Flintstones ending scene on the bridge, the tag, he's depressed. He is stressed out. In fact, right off the bat, we perhaps meet, aside from Ben Sisko, we perhaps, and the first glimpse of Sisko, we see him as a competent first officer on his Saratoga before the ship is blown to pieces along with his wife, and his bitterness sets in. But apart from 5 minutes in Sisko, we never see a captain this low when we first meet them in a pilot, right? I believe. So number one, there's that phrase again. First off, we're seeing Pike at an absolute low, but even more than that, there's obviously a relationship, not a romantic relationship, but there's a relationship between he and number one. And he's not above, I think, poking her. I think he's just doing a little dig. Now, is he yucking about it? No, because he's kind of stressed and depressed and at the point of thinking of resigning and doing all kinds of crazy things that Boyce kind of slaps him back into reality over, like any good CMO would do to his captain. So I see the people talking about this. They either Pike is sexist, which obviously is not true. The writers were sexist. Now, this is the point. I've seen people say also that Somebody mentioned, well, the Cage was never aired, so it isn't canon, so let's not even worry about it. But I hate to tell you that no, it was never aired, except that it was as a special in 1988, 87, 88, when it was put on VHS tape for the first time, when they found in the entire intact color version, after the entire intact color splice with black and white version had been released as well, which I still have that tape. It's amazing. I don't ever want us to lose historical track of that. It had been available, much less the fact that ever since we've had cable, at least the last 4, 5, 6 years, the Cage is right there, not even at the end of the series the way it was on the VHS release. It was the weird episode 80. No, it's right there as season 1, episode 0. So it's right there in front of the first episode. It's right there, the first thing you watch. If somebody sits down to watch original series, front row, bang, there it is. So yeah, it's very much canon, which, brings up the headaches. We've got the 1964 retcon. I'm just saying that this line is not, there's even people that say that line, I believe, check me on this, the line was one of the scenes that was not in the menagerie. So it shouldn't be, which we've already poo-pooed that. Now, the bottom line here is they want to forgive Pike and just say, well, it was 64 and the writers were sexist. Well, let's look at that a minute. It's 1964, but the writers was Gene Roddenberry, period. It's the friggin' pilot. It's Gene. Now, I know. You're going to go off on the Mad Men angle of Gene in his 60s. The button on the desk to let him know which woman was waiting on the outside to come in to catch him with what woman on the inside. But I will also submit to you that he's got number 1 there as second in command in the first place. He's the one fighting to have the ship be 50-50 male-female. And I'm going with the most general of pronouns here, okay? So don't shoot me. He was looking for a 50-50 crew. He had to fight for and settle for a 66-33, a 2/3 third crew. Don't you see? If we've got that many women up there, look, if we've got 50-50 crews, people will think there's a lot of hanky-panky going on up there. That's his quote, his sub-quotation of the network execs in the Inside Star Trek line album. So he's got the initiator of the whole incident himself. He's got a woman yeoman, which was mind-bending enough. His main 2 women characters otherwise would have been traditional males. So sexist? I don't think so. What I want to broach here is the line, I can't get used to women on the bridge, was both a poke at number 1 and recovering about being flustered by the yeoman and trying to make her feel a little better, but just trying to make light of the whole situation. He's giving her a poke, but Pike is giving number 1 a poke. But Gene in his script is putting it in the face of the audience. Oh, by the way, if you hadn't noticed, we've got 2 women on the bridge, and one of them is the second in command. Hello, what we'll eventually establish as 2254. Hello, 1964, 1965 audience, or at least 1965 network execs to start. So yeah, it's Gene making sure you realize that there's women. Now, he does it kind of bass-ackwards, but again, he's done it, I think, in a wry Captain Pike way, maybe not so wry. Maybe Captain Pike is a little more wry here because he's in such a terrible emotional state. But it's, we think of this line, and it's taken Strange New Worlds and everybody's love affair with Anson and his Pike now to go back and have this line kind of explodes out of the archives at us, the way things do at times. And we go back and we find bits and pieces, especially any of our newer fans, our younger fans, and they are a little jarring. And I'm just going to say, we have safely, Pike's house guest that we wake up with is fully a captain. And I love the fact they address each other as captain. That's wonderful. So we know they're our captain. And you could say, well, now it's been retconned. Okay. But if it's all going to be the Prime universe hanging together, it is what it is. And I'm just saying that nothing in that scene negates that. Or Pike's attitude. In fact, as someone else pointed out, before Spock joins the crew again, there's a moment when Pike is on a bridge and he's the only male. It's a fully staffed bridge and he's the only guy, which is so subversively mind-blowing too. So look, we talked about this with this whole recasting of Commodore April as a black man, technically an African Canadian. And it's animated, and people, we got off on a status about the animated, not so much about the retcon, because if they're going to hold true to the original casting, it was 1964. It was default white. It was basically default male, except for the two things that Gene was trying to insert and fight for. So it's one thing to change that. Now, what was interesting to me was, well, if you're going to have white male, and technically a white female, and then a white actor playing a Vulcan. I know. It's great that they've diversified the casting and sprinkled as many species as they can. Not excluding the fact that we're going to have an Andorian, technically an Anar, as chief engineer, which is awesome. I'm just going to have to rely on Prodigy having a chief medical officer Tellarite to get by for a while longer. But that said, the only question here is why recreate some of these characters. I'm coming around to the quiet eruption over Chief Kyle. Young Asian actor playing instead of British the way John Winston did. That's to me a little more interesting than the whole thing about Admiral April. I'm just saying, by the time it's done, I want to know what happened to Admiral April to get busted down to Commodore. And I want to see at some point or hear mention of his wife, Sarah, who I hope is a medical doctor and at least a former Starfleet starship doctor, and a pioneering one in some way that we can bend around. I'm going to wait and see what happens with Chief Kyle. I'll be a little sad if it's completely retcon just for John Winston. John Winston is not animated Admiral April or Commodore April, voiced by James Doohan. John Winston had several appearances, including the Wrath of Khan on the Reliant, but still. So it's a little different. It's 7 years apart. We'll hear what's going on. Maybe there are different Kyles who both happen to be transporter operators. We'll see. I am not going to sink an entire series on one of these. And maybe it's never addressed, and we just go our merry way in 10 or 20 years and say there were two Chief Kyles under two different captains. Maybe we will. And we can have the best of all worlds. It's not enough to sink the show. I think most people were delighted. Now, there's one other bit here. And we've already talked about the whole thing in sickbay. What's going on with Chapel and what's going on with M'Benga? Where is M'Benga and Boyce? Where's M'Benga and Piper and McCoy? And coming back to McCoy, or was he there the whole time? Not being a CMO when he is CMO. It's a delightful actor, delightful character, delightful actor who played meanies on his other roles, not unlike D. And I can't wait to see what they do with that. It's off to a great start. Chapel, of course. We've got Chapel from, how does she get from Spock to Corby and back? And my goodness, I haven't even mentioned T'Pring looking already unfulfilled and unhappy. You see the seeds. I think it's a brilliant way to do it. Pike knows T'Pring. Nobody has to know that Kirk and McCoy know who T'Pring is. Maybe by that time, Spock is not talking about his personal life. Oh, golly, what a concept. We're talking about 6-7 years later. So nothing is out of whack. I thought it was wonderful backstory for T'Pring, and it totally sets up what happens in Amok Time by then. Getting her from Spock to Ston and well, sorry. So I'm fine. The one little hiccup that's interesting is La'an, and I almost refuse to keep saying Noonien Soong just because it's a mouthful. La'an is a great looking character. Actress is lovely. Has a great sense of humor if you've seen her in any of her interviews. But the fact that her family trauma in her younger years was caused by a Gorn kidnapping and a Gorn attack and a Gorn assault, and that throws people because we're talking about first contacts in canon, and me too. I was like, I think some people were confused, thinking that the people on the planet were the Kylians that they were involved with, and broke first contact protocol to just get them up to speed. No, the Gordon was part of Lon's, totally on a pad. Maybe a mention or two by her, but basically it's on the pad that was made very readable. By the way, shout out to Tim Peel and the insane CGI graphics department for all those beautiful star charts that are so clearly and elegantly and consistently deployed across all the series now. It's amazing. Yeah, the Gorn thing of everything may have left me a little the most but I think we have Borg first contact thanks to Q in Q Who, but we now know that the Hansons were investigating myths and legends about Borg and encountered them 10 years before that. So, and I'm not even thinking not even talking about Archer's infamous "who are these people? I guess we can't log them accurately" Ferengian Borg encounters. So there's asterisks. There's there's grain that goes against there's texture that goes against the grain on all of these things. They're not all cut and dried. And it's 7 years before people can read that report and know who the Gorn are. They don't know. She's seen them, maybe. Her family has. When we figure out, the proof will be in the pudding of how her backstory is explored at some point. We'll get a flashback. We may have a repercussions incident, or it may never be touched on again. I'm just saying that we've got a history of first contacts not being quite so pristine and pure. Even we find out more about them later. Obviously, that happened. Years go by. We're reading a pad with years to go by before Arena. But for now, I can let it ride and enjoy the hell out of the series. I don't know how you are about it. I think most people are there. I'm very grateful that they reined in the bridge sets. Didn't have it be quite the bus station it was with the outer loop corridor and all of that. It's been lightened up a lot and gotten out of the glossy black look of Discovery. Yeah, and you know what? We should not let Picard go unmentioned either. There was a lot of blow up, a lot of discussion, honest, earnest discussion. I should say that I haven't seen hate anywhere, but then again, I don't go looking for it. I don't go see the toxic tubers, so I'm sure that's probably going on some level. But even talking about what does this mean for the Borg Collective now with Queen Jurati? Yeah, what does it mean for her? There's pretty much a consensus, and until we get this out of Akiva, I think Terry, I have to check with Terry, but he may have backed off on that part of it. But to speak for the show, but we're looking basically like it's a small mini collective. And before you get your pants in a wad about that one, remember we've had the mini collective of freed Borg out of the cube, the restoration project. We've had the freed Borg that Voyager found, that kickstarted the whole Borg comeback story going into First Contact. We've got the Unimatrix Zero Borg underground. So, I mean, it's not the first time we've seen splinters off the collective. What's the shape of the greater collective? Did Janeway bash it down, shut it down? No, I mean, they're still functioning. And then we get into all kinds of time loops about, well, if Jurati has been here for 400 years, then did anything involving her ever occur? What happened with the events of season 1? You get into that. I mean, if you want to get into butterflies, Rios stayed behind in 2024. They play out his life, but that was kind of amazing. Not that it's never happened before. Everything from Jillian coming forward 100 years, and what were the butterflies of that, to McCoy's gift glasses winding up at a pawn shop in 1986 San Francisco. I mean, there have been butterfly moments, despite the best efforts of our stalwart Starfleet people to never break temporal orders. especially in the years when they didn't exist. Yeah. As much as this is why one faction of fans will say, this is why canon keeping is ridiculous, because it gets broken all the time. This is why the rest of us will say, yes, exceptions happen. But if we don't make an attempt to keep the basic guardrails in place, then we're just all over the map. And it's not so much out of omission. A commission is omission. People that just don't know, just like the first 2 or 3 years of Next Gen writers, pre-Memory Alpha, pre-encyclopedia, pre-anything, because we were at square zero then, not looking back. But in the day, having material on the original series, but nothing on what they had already written, as the writing team, the Chaos on the Bridge writing staff was turning over and over and over. And that's why my Next Generation annual concordances, annual encyclopedias were a godsend to them, because they suddenly had an easier access. Now, everybody, they don't just have Memory Alpha. They got Tim Peel with the Master Stellar database made up from stellar cartography that they're adding to consistently. It's amazing. I hope we can get into this story and start sharing that with the world. I'm so excited for it. You're seeing the results and the fruits of the labor popping up. And I know I've gone far afield from my original line, but let's wrap this up. I think there's plenty of room to do all this, because on the Picard side, the very bottom of it all, and maybe I should have just made this a separate topic some week. The very bottom of all, what was the instigator? What was the cause of the entire plot arc of season 2 Picard? It was Q. It was Q. Basically, I saw somebody say, so season 2 Picard was basically a 10-hour version of Tapestry, which, yeah, slightly different flavor, which begs to my question. If we went and delved into the mental health of Picard and this deep, dark secret he had cauterized over in his heart, in his emotional health, about his mother's suicide, to the point where he just imagines her older, and his first go-to image of her is older, as in Where No One's Gone Before. If that's all true, and that made him the man he is now in some layers, especially his intimate life, how did we get from the boy who imagined his mother never having died, and especially having been the instrument of her death by leaving the key and letting her into the basement and yada yada? How do we get from there to the crazy ass guy that gets stabbed by the Nausicaans at Earhart Station at the Domjot table? The whole lesson of Tapestry was that crazy boy Picard, had he tried to avoid the conflict, would have wound up as a wallflower in Starfleet. And it's getting the artificial heart and turning something on that made him the leader, gave him the gravitas and the cojones to go on and be the captain he was. Exactly the opposite of Kirk, who was a stack of books with legs, remember? And then loosened up a little bit. I always loved how Picard and Kirk's trajectories were different that way. Now I'm looking at wondering how that kid dealt with that trauma to be the wild man on campus, which in some ways I can totally see. But it's just interesting. This is not the first time we've delved into the psyche of JL. And here's where I wish I had Dr. Ali. Here's where I miss Life Support Live. Maybe we'll do that as one of our specials now, because we started with the traumas of Jean-Luc Picard, and now we've got a whole new one to layer on, and now we've got to start collecting the dots to make sure his traumas don't bump into each other, and they flow smoothly into the man he is that we know. So, the bottom line, is that it's all because of Q. And name me one time in the entire history of the Star Trek franchise since Q's premiere when anything Q did was chalked up to science and technobabble. It's the closest thing we have to magic in Star Trek, except the fact that they are mortal. They can commit suicide. They can fight each other in the Q Civil War. They do reproduce by some belabored method, or not belabored, and they do eventually die, expire. Spoilers, as we saw Q do. So the bottom line, though, is how do they do what they do? As much as our science-driven, tech world of Star Trek, no one has ever. So in the grand tradition of the entire rest of the franchise since TNG, anything that you have a problem about, Girardi and Elnor on his ship, and Rios and Girardi being gone in the blink of an eye from the Stargazer Bridge, and Butterfly. Just put your faith in Q. Put your faith that in his last gasp of energy expended, he fixed everything. Everything that needs to be fixed is fixed. So no headaches from the time travel of Girardi and her time loop and her, her two places at one time. No issues with anything. So clean slate, yay, it's TV. No, it's Q. So yeah, so much going on. I can't wait to see what he's saying. I can't wait to hear what people are chattering about this week as we see people on the locations for the Voyager documentary tour perk rewards. But just going forward and settling into this Strange New Worlds Planet of the Week situation with these running arcs going, which isn't so much the original series as it's more like Next Generation back at that level. But can't wait to see where it goes. Can't wait to talk to the creators behind it. Maybe get a little more firming up of what some of these concepts are for going forward, because there is a Picard season 3 that is wrapped. It's totally done. We know who's not coming back. We know who is. So we'll see. We'll see, gang. I'm pretty excited. I'm excited to see so much chatter. All this discussion. The discussion, again, that I saw was civil and spirited and forceful, but nothing that was off the edge, nothing horrible, nothing ugly, nothing, maybe it's a little bit of sarcasm, but a little healthy sarcasm is totally good for us. Ask Chris Pike on the bridge when he's feeling at his most depressed. Sarcasm FTW sometimes. Yeah. Hey, listen, let's move along. I want to thank everybody for being with us. And the ones I want to thank first, of course, are our Patreon folks. So thank you, everybody who's in on our Patreon, our TTLers, right? That's Diana Hopkins and Robin Wilson and Lawrence Todd and Marie Siegel, Keith Rombach, Justin Porteous, Nathaniel Robinson, and Blaze K. Thank you, thank you. And our live wires, of course, Rusty Harold, Halbert Gunn Johnson, Robert McLean, Alan Hoensi, J.R. Poole, Byron Bailey, Dave Gregory, Gay Clevin Lindstrom, and Casey Shafsky. Thanks so much for everybody. If you want to jump in on my Patreon, it's pretty simple. It's just a $5 and $10 level. I know, I've got to finish serving the $10, but it's patreon.com/Trekland Live. The grand reopening is upon us, and things are a little crazy. I hope everybody's staying safe and well and doing all the things and looking forward to being quasi-normal again. I hope I'm not speaking too soon. And as we go about it, looking around here as we wind things down, I do want to remind everybody there's another Trek Files up. I'm back with the great Fran Taylor of Sci-Fi Sisters, looking at a memo Gene wrote about cautioning against casting that's not very diversified because of default human casting. It's an interesting corollary to the casting revolutions of the 70s, 80s, 90s, getting a little more diversity on TV, and the 20s, I should say, I guess. So check it out. It's right there at the Trek Files on Facebook where the document is, but podcast.roddenberry.com for all of this and the new ones. There's a fun Sci-Fi 5 out today about a wacky Australian sci-fi show from the 70s. It's trying to look like Star Trek without being Star Trek. You should go check it out. But there's a whole host of Roddenberry podcasts now that are a lot of fun. Otherwise, hey gang, I'm at Larry Nemechek on Twitter. Please like and subscribe me over on YouTube at Larry Nemechek's Trekland if you're not there already. It's also the same for Instagram and Facebook, where a lot of you are. Really appreciate that. Oh, yeah, portal47.net. We've had new members coming in all spring. It's lovely to see that as everybody feels like the need to connect our old dots with our new dots and stay up with the old and the new. And we've got two exciting guests coming in Portal this week. Our guests, we're going to have Kirk Thatcher, punk on a bus, but also a producer and an ILM associate from 3 and 4 of the original movies. Can't wait to hear from him. And of course, the comeback on Picard. That was how that came about. And then Dave Blass, who I've gotten to know here just in the last few months, who's responsible for so much of the cool, funky, grounded feeling of Picard. Even if you didn't always like where the story went, it was such a fun ride to visually experience. And some of the old guard that he pulled in to add touches at all over the place, either big, bold ones or even slight things like Jeff Mandel behind the flags at Starfleet Academy. Yeah, a lot of fun. So I'll be right back. I'm going to take a real short break. If you're watching us later, you're missing all the live action. And I know it's on a Tuesday afternoon for most of the states. So if you do get a chance sometime and you're watching later all the time, try us out Tuesdays at 1 Pacific and 4 Eastern. Otherwise, I'll be right back after this break. Till then, if you're leaving us now, stay healthy, do all the things. Stay woke, check your sources. And then if it looks like it's a real person, maybe open your mind to what they're saying. If they have proof, verifiable proof, which is what I mean about being a real source. Because there's a lot that they have kept from us over the years. And I'm not saying that with my tin foil hat on. I'm saying that as somebody who didn't know about the Tulsa Race Massacre until I was in my 30s. And I grew up 2 hours from Tulsa. That's my go-to anger point. I guess what I'm saying, everybody, is have a fun spring and trek well. All right. Boom. The Parrot Analytics is that company. Out of New Zealand, they came to the States to measure the digital world. And it's a digital world that needed measuring because they had no need of commercials and ad rates, right? So the Nielsen's were kind of pointless. And oh, my friend Jonathan, you've just been going bonkers, haven't you? I'm saying this without having done it today. Yes. Thank you, Jonathan. I'm going to jump in right here with this. The pad says the species information and name are unconfirmed. Right. And that they're aware of the name, and this might not even have been them. Yes, absolutely. Anyway, Parrot. They did not post one of the top 10 ranking pages as they do. They've gotten really, they'll do 2 weeks at a time and then skip 2 weeks and then do 2 weeks at a time. However, TV Geek, huh? Okay, John X. However, John X, who put me on to our good viewer here, is supplied me with some sheets from another site that's pulling Parrot Analytics out and doing it. Parrot Analytics himself, though, has those 30-day and 60-day trending pages. So no, there was no weekly digital or overall page posted this week yet. If follows form, they'll do it in a week or two and then do 2 weeks at a time or something odd. What we can say, though, is right now, Strange New Worlds, after its debut, is showing up as a 30-day trend at 6.6, which is putting it in the good category. 6.6 times the average demand expression, which is their trademark mnemonic or algorithm, which is good, which is low compared to all the other treks, but it just premiered. The trend line, I should say, is shot up, as you would expect. It's not really showing up. It's at 85.6% on a 3-day. On trending lines where the older low averages are pulling down a high average, it's not showing up well, but it's still really early. So we'll see. Picard, on the other hand, though, Picard is at 30.6 on the 30-day average, and it's at 92% compared to all other action adventures. So it's up in its outstanding place. Its trend line is holding steady. Discovery is actually still hanging in. What's interesting, though, and John sent me these screenshots of some weekly reports coming out at another site where the weekly report for Picard, we don't have a comparison to other series, but its number is 33.1, which is way up over its average had been trending average had been I know, sorry to get you lost in the data here. Its trending 30-day average had been 30, so it this week it was at 33, which is exceptional. Put it up there. It's a real spike. Yeah, it's a real spike. I'm sorry. It's trending at the peak demand, which is a new term, was at 40.2 times the average. The average demand was at 33.1, which is awesome. What is this? Worldwide, its peak in the US was 40.2. Its average demand, these are all compared to the average show, was 33 times average. Worldwide, Picard's finale was at 56 times the average show worldwide on peak demand, and 44 compared to 33. 44, almost 45 on the average demand worldwide peak compared to the US. So nothing. Now, here's some Strange New Worlds weekly data that is updated and is without a trend line. It's the last 7 days. It's in the outstanding category safely. The average demand at 18.3, which is up there, in the US. Its peak demand, which is interesting how they're measuring that and how that compares to others. Its peak demand was at 32, so very healthy. And then worldwide, well, we know what the worldwide situation is. It's not it's not as good because it's limited. Right? No. Yeah, Strange New, because of the crippling of the lack of distribution for Paramount Plus. And I know nobody in Europe wants me to, or the rest of the world wants me to bring this up. But it's even showing worldwide numbers that its peak demand was at 31.9 compared to 32 in the US. It only brings it down a little bit to throw the world numbers in. And the average demand was at 11.6 compared to 18.3. So it's definitely making a spike, definitely making an impact. It'll be good to see what the US numbers are compared to other shows at the time. In fact, there's a lot of writing going on, as you've heard in the news, about Netflix losing subscribers, 200,000 in the first quarter. And yes, the merger there of Warner Brothers and Discovery Channel is taking a chunk, but Paramount Plus is really falling pretty much firmly number 3, ahead of as far as their originals, a corporate owner, it's number 3 after Disney and then Warner Brothers Discovery. But as a share of the overall pie, before the merger, it was Netflix, then Prime, Disney, Hulu, HBO, Apple TV, and Paramount Plus. But that's shifting, and they're showing signs that it picked up a ton of subscribers. Did I have a picked up a huge chunk of subscribers in the first quarter? 6.8 million subscribers in the first quarter. So Paramount Plus, and they're looking at things that aren't even Trek. They're pointing out to 1883. They're looking at the Halo series, and that's fine and dandy. But we know what's going on here. The numbers are starting to come in for Picard and Strange New World, and if we ever get that little old prodigy out there onto Nickelodeon, but still growing that audience from the ground up, it's even better. They're in a very, very good place, and we'll see as Strange New World keeps unspooling how the fan base is reacting to that. Now I will shut up and re-scroll and see how my fan base, or our Tuesday fan base, is reacting to everything right here. Did I stir up anything? We will see. It's very true that I also may have overstepped something. I mean, it's been kind of a busy time, if you haven't noticed. And I've tried to watch everything twice through and take notes. I've also been enjoying, for the first time in let's see, 20 years, my better half having massive rewatches. She zipped through Enterprise, did a rewatch, fast forwarding through the boring parts, did a rewatch of Enterprise in about a week, and then went through Discovery in about 4 or 5 days, and then is now reviewing Picard again. So it's gotten really fast forward in this house. So hi everybody. I've re-scrolled. I will catch up. So, Cairo, why are people all the rage about the cage nowadays? Because everyone's going back to research everything. Good to see everybody. If you're new in the chat, I will try to shout you out. Very good. Hi, Galen. Did you notice I got through your name without stumbling? Although I never stumbled before, but it's good to have you in the Patreon group. Hi, Adam. I think it's been a while. Let's see. Yeah, Anne-Marie. Yes. So excited for all the Voyager documentary away mission pics. It's going to start flooding the airwaves, isn't it? They'll probably start tonight with they're having a couple of dinners aside from the actual go to locations thing. Yes. Yes, you do. On the big one, on the little one, it's an explosion of tour experience. I think it's finally hit the zeitgeist, which is cool. Away missions are back. Hide your red shirts. Yeah. Oh, hey, Dan. Well, then some of us to the podcast world are called. So good to see you and good luck there. Hey, Daniel, again. Good to meet you at Chicago, right? Chicago. Bits of Chicago and Detroit are, even though they were vastly different situations, there was some overlap, and I'm trying not to do it. Thank you, Dr. Dave, for the shout out as always. Let's see. We've got the Continentals climbing in. I already saw Cairo back home, I guess. Captain Calvin. I know. Strange New Worlds. What is that? I know. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, say no more. Let's see. You liked, after the last 2 episodes of Picard, you like season 2 better than season 1? Yeah, there wasn't so much angsty teenage shadow lurking in season 2. There was some underground interrogation room warehouse chain link fence lurking. I thought the middle third or the third of 4 acts kind of lagged a little on Picard, but overall, I thought it was a romp and I thought it put more smiles on faces than not. I'm just going to say that. I know the tech heads and the visual porn folk loved it. Yeah, I'm seeing that. Speaking of crossovers, and not even being born in the UK. Well, I guess we're immune from that because we started off with a Canadian captain, followed by a British captain. If you think about it, Avery was our first American-born captain, dadgummit, lead captain. Let's see. Newsflash. The Enterprise has 14 Chief Kyles. Not kidding, really. There we go. Aha. Your little mini review here, Daniel. I was so delighted with the first episode of Strange New Worlds. You loved how Captain Pike used the day the Earth stood still as his frame of reference as to how to handle the situation. Yeah, with the Kylies? The Kylians? Yeah. Do we ever get their name? I have to go back and check that. That's the kind of thing that keeps me up at night. And I didn't say this on the main show. It was an amazing job of keeping Will's cameo spoilers on the Picard finale secret. I was eye twinkling just over that as it unfolded. I was really, it brought a smile to my face, a little bit of a mini squee. But what really got me, so it was great to see Will, and now to hear this about that they were fighting, it sounds like it was maybe Lower Decks that was fighting over the first Will Wheaton as well as Wesley Crusher appearance. But what really got me, I smiled at that, but what mind blew me was the fact that the travelers are the ones who oversee the supervisors. Who supervises the supervisors? It's a new episode. It's the travelers. I'm like, okay. So we've got Gary Seven and Eric Minyak, traveler from Tau Sigma C or whatever he was, and will now. We've got tied up and Laris, and it's a great case of use the universe. I also had forgotten the line earlier on where they're rocking through was it Discovery, I guess, and it says, well, it's not the Metrons, and it's not the Iconians, and it's not somebody else, one of the super aliens. It's like they all got acknowledged. Even Discovery was acknowledging the super aliens. So yeah, whose works cannot be, whose transmutational ability and telekinesis and all of that has not been adequately explained. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Aside from back to the Doctor Who moment, aside from basic racism and the misogyny, the Doctor isn't even human. So how could he be English or not? Yeah. He's Gallifreyan, of course. I know, Captain Calvin. When will you ever get you there in Germany get SNW season 1? Yes. This Pike is after the cage. So what I was trying to say in the discussion, and I guess I left it out of my main part, was that we see Pike's true colors even in the cage. He's got two women in his employ, but we see those moments where he's the only guy on the bridge. We see there's a lovely, what started this was me retweeting a picture of a little cast picture. It's basically the bridge crew. Pike number 1, it's Spock, and everybody else that's on the bridge, whether they're regulars or they're extras, and or small recurring bits so far. And somebody mentioned the bit about can't have a woman on the bridge, or not used to a woman on the bridge. And I was like, this is 5 years later, gang. This is 5 years later, and he's fully recovered from his trauma, and he's not misogynistic. In fact, the events of the cage shows that he cares about women, and not just in a white knight protector way. Anyway, but yes, yeah, it's 5 years after the cage. Hey, Stephen. Yes, thank you, Nathaniel. The line was there to focus if somehow they missed it, it was there to focus the audience's attention on it. Yeah, it's like Bashir's line. Oh, Bashir's line about the color of his uniform in Rapture, bringing the audience to notice something. Yes. He says, you're different, of course, number 1. I think that's what it is. Yeah, and it's a make the meaning out of it, but yeah. Cairo, you said, for me, not every line like that needs to be necessarily taken literally as a document from the 23rd century. Oh, it was what was written in that time and wouldn't be written today. Yeah, but I would say, Cairo, why not texture, not trivia? Why not introduce all that? But again, I think it wasn't written. Why would Gene be so sexist there? He's trying to bridge his sexist audience, perhaps, to the reality he's trying to bring. And it's clearly a little poke at number 1. Turnabout Intruder doesn't even really exist in your mind. Well, it's not a great episode, and it sure as hell is not a way to have a finale for a series. Kirk, Spock, and Scotty just walk into a turbo lift and take off without even a speech. And that's the end of the original series. Yes. It was really, they were limping out the door, literally. It's also the episode where they fought with the director who had them exit the briefing room out another corner where there was never seen a door. Yeah, and I don't think the casting was that great, especially the poor guy who was her boyfriend, lover, engineer, supporter, enabler. If you've ever gotten the blooper reel, the poor guy could not learn lines, and he was constantly messing up his lines. I'm surprised they didn't double the budget on that just for the reshoots. Yeah. Well, all the series, all the discussion about an animated series, all the series have clinker episodes. So, yes, TNP looks gorgeous in its upgraded form now, and it's It is amazing. Hi, Sophia. Always glad when you can join us from Portugal. We need we need universal happy Pike and shouty Spock. Exactly. Exactly. He also pokes Spock about his ears. I know that was intentional. The new Spike. Yes. This is what we were saying if that was trimmed from the menagerie. And then I had the discussion about people saying, well, if it's not in the menagerie and it's only in the cage, then it's not canon because but that's, yep. Absolutely, Daniel. Ooh. Tell me all about it, Uncle Daniel. Hello, Linda. Good to see you. Good to see so many. Yeah. Wait now, what? Episode 100, so one Lou. Oh is sometimes used for signage pointing out the toilet. It is. Okay. Okay. Thank you for explaining, Christoph. Very good. Yeah. Let's see. Okay. Looking for real questions. Oh, well, Stephen, you're headcanoning that this Kyle is husbands with the one on TOS. Well, and do they get divorced, or does this one get killed, or I don't know. How far has your headcanon taken you? They call him Admiral April in the Strange New Worlds first episode, but he's Commodore April in the Counterclock incident. But that's fine. We're going to see what happens to Mbenga at some point and Chapel at some point. Everybody else is pretty much a straight through. We know what happened to Kirk later on. Stranger things have happened, Captain Calvin. A Kyle, and a Kyle. Yeah, my closed captions had KYLE, so we'll see. Kirk did one time call him Mr. Cowell. He may have just kind of been burping when he said Kyle, but there's a really famous moment when he's at the helm and he calls him Cowl, like it's COWL, like a cowl. It's bizarre. Nobody wanted to redo the take. Admiral April said, Tobias, that he had to pull a lot of strings so Pike wouldn't get in trouble, and then to find out about Pike's history. So maybe he gets busted down for his hubris. Admiral April? We will see. Okay, let everybody get their platform issues settled out. Yes, Tobias, you were on there with a second. What's funky is that I keep meaning to watch all 5 on my screener. Yeah, and haven't. What do you? Yes, and thank you, Jonathan Connor, popping in that people who were apoplectic about Chapel's rank as a commander, she's on civilian exchange, so 3 bands maybe, or 2 bands or whatever, may be totally decorative, or it may be the rank system within the civilian auxiliary, or maybe that's why she's got white and Mbenga is in his smock blues. I'm waiting to see another nurse in his sickbay. Surely he's not the only one. Do they only have 203 people aboard? Are they going back to that line? We'll see. This Chief Kyle might be the guy working with Chief Pitcairn in the cage. Which means he's a 5-year veteran of the crew now, at least. I had not thought of that. And hairstyles change. He's gone from his buzz cut to a little longer hairstyle. It's going to be interesting to see. Yep. A lot of spoilers about Strange New Worlds and a certain species this week. Who was before Piper? Mark Piper. And there you go. Phil Boyce and Mark Piper, for those of you who have not been students of sickbay, like some of us have been for 30 years. Star chart porn. You betcha, John. You betcha. Hey, Nathaniel, you thought she was too much of a copy of Drummer from The Expanse? Well, we'll see. We'll see how it develops. We'll see how it develops. Yes. Great graphics. Eye candy. Maybe we should say eye candy instead of star chart porn. But, right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Lorca had a Gorn. Of course, it was never said on screen, and nobody knew that he even knew what it was. So it was there. It was a trapping found, obviously, somewhere, or he killed it. But either way, nobody knew. And that was a couple of years before this, although La'an's situation was a couple of years before that. Oh, Susan, you're in the wrong place. We just spoiled the hell out of it for you then. Eesh, 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 eesh. Oh, I'm sorry. I hope we didn't just blow. I hope you smelled what was coming and got out of the way. Maybe I should have started with Picard and then worked into the main thing. I really was amazed at how that one line of Pike's kind of kept every like 6 or 8 hours from different people kept blowing up in Twitter. It was kind of amazing. My Twitter, anyway. Then there we go. Thank you. This is what I was trying to remember. Borgatti. Hey, Garrett. There you are, man. Surviving Syphacon. Joining us on a Tuesday. Good to see you, man. Yep. Syphacon. Best little convention, best big convention, growing convention in the country, gang, down in Lake Charles. Mm-hmm. I know. I feel for all you guys in Europe. There's a huge transport conduit that opened up in Picard. I think we know it's coming next. We'll see. Right there in the heart of the Federation. Clearly charted on star charts. Thank you, Tim Peel. Although, as Christoph says, some of us can't watch SNW, but you've already seen it. Yeah. Absolutely. This is what I said. Galen, you're right there with me. Mm-hmm. Okay. Borgatti definitely does not sound Swedish. Very good. Well, I mean, it was 400 years later. Oh, you mean in the moment? Yeah. Yeah. Defiant to the end. Surviving his own trauma and the way he'd been whipped around by Star back and forth and back and forth. Yeah, it's funny how they I mean, the whole thing in season 1 was Rios and Girardi together, and then they quickly spent 3 months making sure that didn't happen because they had other places they wanted them to go. They didn't want him torn up about her becoming, Borgified more emerged, whatever. That would be nice. At least first contact day this year in September. If they really want to get started in time for Christmas. Yeah. The way they were developing, either he stayed or her and her junior pulling a Jillian Taylor and coming up forward. And that would be 2 people. And that would be who are they leaving behind? Yeah. Very true. Very true, Daniel. It was amazing. And now you're seeing some of the documenting about the shooting that day. Because you have that weight of knowing this is This is it. A lot like shooting the Wrath of Khan death scene. Nick Meyer did not know what he was getting into. Dom Jot playing Dom Jot, you man. And as the Tellarite bartender said on Lower Decks, I just had that table jotted last week. I love that line. I just had that table jotted after the fight breaks out. Yes, it sounds very Italian. I was thinking of Italian car. Yep. Let's see. Yeah, Linda. Aw, life support live. I know. A life support live special on season 2 would be great. I know. I gotta talk to Ali. We said we'd try to do something maybe every quarter. I haven't heard of on the baby front though, so we'll see what's happening up with the family first. Well, you got tired of Girardi being manipulated by antagonists? Well, she was pretty strong stuff both times. I mean, you think of that, but then you think of her injecting herself on season 1. I just saw that scene again, and coming up at the end with the answer to fight with the multiple, the mirror. Talking about a mirror universe. And then in this season, she took on the Borg Queen and fought her to a draw. And then in the end, outwon and saved the day because she wasn't being manipulated. So she did some courageous things for that little doctor who we all thought was such a milk toast. So what was the point of going to 2024? To offer an inferior take on the social and political problems of our era? As a Mexican American, I'm disappointed with the shallow take on immigration. I know. I thought that was going to be a much bigger bit. And maybe when you see the thing with the serial storytelling is, I think a lot of times they have all these grand ideas and great goals and great ideas and themes they want to get into. And then they get into the reality of character crunching and scene crunching, and things just, they either get totally cut or they get so condensed down, something that was going to be a mini arc gets reduced to 4 or 5 sentences of dialogue. So, I mean, there's definitely times you can see there are corners cut. I love how people run everywhere in the Kelvinverse and on Discovery, but people just saunter into scenes on Picard. I never saw so much sauntering in my life. Well, the La Serena is cloaked here and the house is here, and we'll just kind of go back and forth like it's the kids camping in the yard. It was a little funny. I'm not overly criticizing, but I could not help noticing that. So yeah, I wish there'd been more. It was kind of like thrown out there like, and next on our list of issues to mention, bang, here's some token ICE roughhousing of an assault and abuse of immigrants. And then it lasted for 10 minutes and was gone. The point of going to 2024, well, it wasn't this year. They went 2 years into the future. I guess maybe to hedge against some crazy news event happening. We'll have to ask and see. They did bring bits in to cover the fact that we obviously know there's no Europa mission to a moon of Jupiter happening right now that's crewed, that has a human crew on it that's not even a drone. He became the wild card because he had to deal with the fact that his mom died. Yeah, as a cadet. Think about the way he remembers his father. He saw Pop Picard as Mr. Grumpy Pants, or worse. And his mother, he was Baltar, yeah. And see, I still see Baltar as Commander Core. Yeah. As that's what I'm saying. I can see the thread, so you can take that, and I'm just throwing it out there. I've seen nobody draw the line between traumatized young boy Picard who changes the image of his mother to wild hair cadet taking on Nausicaans on a distant world outpost while you're still a cadet. Yeah. Ali misses. I saw him posting. He started a Strange New World discussion thread on the Facebook page and mentioned something on that line. So Gang, our life support live page is still up and being actively used, and I'm gonna have to snag Ali to see what he's thinking. I need to chime in there too. I saw that the other day. It's just become an insane week and an insane month. May was supposed to be the off month. Yes. Yes. Q fixed things that were messed up to whatever weird thing he did before by himself. Yeah. Basically, whatever you need to have happen, Q did it. So, and that's not an invention of the series. That's always been Q. If they redid the series, Q would be the force that forced Archer or Beckett to jump from body to body. But that's a quantum leap of a joke. Absolutely. Yes. Enterprise seasons 5 to 7. Yeah. Well, we had Enterprise seasons 5 to 7. We would have got the beginning of the Romulan War. And then maybe the last year could have skipped ahead. Yeah, I saw the guys have Rick, which is interesting. That's a huge leap of trust. We will see. I haven't even bothered, but maybe if they break the wall down, and maybe if Rick is feeling the need to express himself, we will see. Oh, you and your sister argued about the timey-wimey arc of Picard and just agreed. Like I said, just say whatever becomes a bottle, smooth what you can. But if you get to an absolute cul-de-sac of logic, just say it's a Q thing. Right. And it was such a big Q thing, he used up the last of his oomph and expired, setting everything to the best ratings. When he dies, his force traverses to a galaxy far, far away a long time ago and becomes oh my God. Oh my God. Yes. Cool. Yeah, Friends, pretty awesome. Very good. Glad you all saw. Oh, I didn't even talk about the Kirk. Should we talk about that? And people who are upset who said, well, so James T says only he called George Samuel Kirk Sam. And guess what? Pike calls him Samuel. So come on, gang. Come on, gang. Just because Sam Kirk was a civilian in 2267 doesn't mean he can't be in Starfleet. We got so little about his dossier. We don't know. We don't know if he had a Starfleet career because he obviously did. Mm-hmm. Oh, this is a long one, Justin. What are you saying? Oh, it's a rant. Okay. Okay. You're on pain meds. But after reading a few of the Trek Facebook pages after the Strange New Worlds premiere, when did Trek fans become so damn petty about the littlest of details? 90% of them I just can't ignore. I can just ignore, but I totally lost it this time. Like, I mean, how can you get upset over Pipe's warp engagement catchphrase? Over hit it? They're upset about it because it feels abusive? Are you going to undo, people stomping on a gas accelerator? Wow. Really? You had people upset about him saying hit it? Some people need to get there was a whole debate. Trek fans in Canada, I want to say Alberta or Saskatchewan, somebody had something to do with assimilation in their car tag, meaning Borgish. And because the word was getting mixed up with the attempt to take the native peoples, the original nations, First Nations, to wipe them out over the last century until cultural awareness and diversity kind of flowered again the last 50 years. But all those years of trying to wipe out the language and basically, vanilla-ize all the native kids in the U.S. as well as Canada. In the Canada, it became interesting. So they refused her car tag that said assimilate or assimilate this or whatever it said. And they were like, I'm not ready. I'm just a Star Trek fan. And they didn't, So, I mean, those overlaps happen. Sadly, when people do ugly things that poor, innocent English words get wrapped up with. Most of them innocent anyway. Mm, 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 mm. I know, Carl. I know. I didn't even. I need to write. I need to write them or do a video or something really quick. This weekend turned out to be the Star Trek Voyager dock tours and the Paso Robles wine and music fest that's part of the Voyager dock too on Monday. So I couldn't do it with travel on Sunday, but I got to do something to mark the occasion because the Starland conventions were very special to me, and maybe I'll say something about this next Tuesday. I have a lot of fond memories. It was Patrick's first convention, at least convention in the States. Um, it was my model for ThunderCon when I started. I remember madly riding the Next Generation Companion in the back seat while somebody else drove us on our 12-hour drive to Denver. So yeah, but it was so worth getting to. It was so different than anything I had within 10 hours of radius of home. I never want to knock anyone's warp phrase, but let's fly. But it's okay. It's okay. I'm never going to knock. As far as Burnham has come and watching it in a condensed rewatch, it's been funny watching the pendulum swing all over the place with Discovery. In a gradual improvement, I've got to say. Aside from the people that love the first season and don't like the later. So it's just going to be all over the map. It's going to be all over the map. Mm-hmm. Oh, John's got a good point over here in our sidebar chat. John Connor's like the whole the Q's line about every timeline means you can have things, little minor points across, and it can explain finally Punk on a Bus number 2 grabbing his neck or touching his neck, some kind of an echo effect feeling. Yep, 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 yep. Oh, let's fly. Let's spin is right there. Yeah, but not for warp, just ordinary warp. You got black alert. Let's jump. Does she say let's jump? Anyway. And the dish only spins for the spore drive. It doesn't spin for warp drive. Mm-hmm. Um, oh, you're talking about overlapping. The sonic screwdriver that Gary and I always thought years later, I thought about the sonic screwdriver. But I'm saying 60, 69, 68, nobody in the States knew a thing about Doctor Who, unless they were really, really media savvy and went back and forth a lot. Back and forth a lot. Oh, Justin. Yeah, get well soon, Justin. Hang in there, man. Maybe you'll feel a little bit better about it. So there you go. Will Wheaton is the next Doctor Who. Obviously. It would be really funny if we ever had this mega merger and we just found out. The other name for, I like the way, what was it, Lara's? The other name for what she called herself at first, the protector, is a supervisor. Whoop, 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 alarm bells. Yes. Well, yeah, very true. Very true. Brian Yates. Hello, welcome back, Brian. What are you saying? Between the folder in the last episode of Picard, Project Con, and Pike's line in S&W, some people wonder if the eugenics wars have been retconned to directly tie into World War III. Any thought on that? I think they're still separate incidents. Yeah, I do. I also think, and this is a research project. I did not realize until maybe 3 or 4 months ago, the whole world is running around saying World War III starts in 2026. And I'm like, where did that come from? Because we know when it ended. It ended about 10 years ish before first contact. And we know it was nuclear. And nuclear wars do not go on for 20 or 30 years. There's nothing left. I mean, unless you fire one nuke a year, what is the lie? How in the world? I'm all for retconning things and texture nut, but how in the world do you have a nuclear war go on for almost 50 years? I wondered about the origin, and it turns out the entire origin point of that is the year on the bio screen from Inner Mirror Darkly from the Prime Universe that Mirror Archer is reading, which was the thing that Mike Sussman dashed off very quickly to throw into the scene. And looking at the list of events with nothing after that for another 20 or 30 years, I'm just wondering if that was a typo and that should have been 2046, because it makes absolutely no sense. For now, I see everybody running around quoting Memory Alpha, and Memory Alpha is taking it right. This needs to be a deep dive. This needs to be a cannon fodder in my paper column. If I wasn't so busy running around with tours and cons and lining up guests, that's a deep dive moment. I'm gonna plant the flag right here in the chat section of this, and we'll get back to it later. But as far as I can tell, the only, unless Mike took that from one of the books that has a crazy explanation for it from 2005, but I don't think so. My gut feeling is it was a typo, and now it's become enmeshed and entrenched, but it's silly. It's silly unless for some reason the nuclear exchange happened early and then they fought for 30. No, I mean, you have 100 years war from medieval times. No modern war has gone on and on. I mean, you've got the Japanese invading Manchuria in 1931, and people who say World War II started in 39, a lot of people include the Japanese invasion of Manchuria for 8 years prior as really part of World War II. But even then, in the 20th century, if you want to say that whole arc, you've got a 14-year war, not a 40-year war, 30 or 40 years. So that's on my list of things to talk about. The great cannon smoother, can see no reason. I think that's a factoid that is not worth dying on the hill for. But that's me. So I would say that, given that puts a lot more time in between the two. And no, I still want eugenics war to be separate from World War III. We've had different death totals for both of them. And I know the great caveat here, it's almost as good as Q Magic, is talking about how paper records from this whole period are just slipshod. They're not now, but after the nuclear exchange, they will be. So records are a mess. And that gets delved on even more so. So we will see. But I did love that folder. But it was dated 96. So if the original canon dates hold up that they launched in 96 secretly on a secretly developed Botany Bay ship, we'll see. Mm-hmm. Yeah, John, this is what I'm thinking. We're getting into the weeds here with the Parrots methodology. But yeah, obviously that it's the standalone for the week, and the earlier weeks are pulling down the average or the mean or whatever we will see. Thank you. This is the Larry scrolling back marker. Okay. Hey, Melon, you thought Picard was dark, but it showed hope at the end. Yeah, maybe we're coming out of the era of the everything has to be dark to be respectable and award winning. We'll see. I was thinking about that the other day. You want Will to be a companion for a doctor. We ever had that crossover comic again, we might, yeah. This is very true, John X. This is why I've already put the original series from the 60s box away on the shelf of dramatized mission logs for the masses. Yes, this is something that doesn't happen beyond the original series very often. It's been kind of a shake. It's been kind of mind-blowing to me, girl, that we're actually talking about these things. And of course, Janet has a very unique perspective on stuff. As with much in life, she has her own opinion about things, and they may not match anybody else's from any three other factions. But she's unique. Yep, yep, yep. And at times she feels exactly the way I do on some things. Yeah. Okay, okay. Hmm. Okay, I see you. I see you, John. Okay. Christoph, I might mention the two upcoming Portal 47 guests. Those might actually lure some people in after all. I did. Yeah, yeah. Kirk Thatcher and then Dave Blass at the end of the month. We're finally having our April guest in the middle of the month. Some of these people, though, would be, well, Dave, I almost would see. This is what Portal is about. I think, oh, I want to save him from the open house. But then I go, how many people are, nobody's, Dave Blass's name is not a household name. So I'm torn between what is the power they will give people versus who's going to attract people in the first place. It's a funky balancing act. So, but we're only doing season 1 because Dave was production designer for season 2. So we're not going to spoil, or 3. We're not going to spoil season 3, but we're going to be all about the season 2 and his life and career and his own fandom. Yes. The travelers watch the watchers. Travelers watch the supervisors and the watchers, I guess. Yeah. That traveler scene is your favorite scene of all Kurtzman Trek. Woo, for the time being. Well, okay. I was just watching Nepenthe, though. It's hard to beat some of those scenes. There you go. Let's get this official. Paramount Plus hits the UK and somebody else on June 22nd. South Korea? The day before SNL airs. So you'll get season 8, and you can have, the UK will get to binge the first 7 episodes legally and watch 8. And you'll be with us for the last 2 and finale. And the GSA, Germany's, not the General Services Administration, but the GSA was reconfirmed for later this year. Sorry, gang. But at least on the next cycle, at least we'll finally have this big realignment finished up. Let's see. What are you saying here, Michael? Babylon 5's first ones versus Star Trek's next phasers or Qs or travelers or Metrons or Organians. Yeah. And basically how the literary verse has had him for decades as legally distinct from Doctor Who. Yeah. Well, I've worried about Gary Seven that way. Although, again, in 1968, nobody in the States knew that who the hell Gary Seven was. And we've lost Dorothy and what's his name? Gene. We've lost Gene and Dorothy. And it was taken from a script written by I've forgotten his name. It was technically the co-writer. I started saying Martin Lawrence. No, not Martin Lawrence. Art Lawrence pitched a story about something like that. So it wasn't even Gene's idea, but Gene took it under his wing to pilotize it. Yes, an admiral is higher ranking than a commodore. That's why commodores had 3. Yes. The braid gets flashier, the pips get more numerous. Remember, you remember in the flashback on Enterprise, Forrest was a Commodore at the time of the NX beta test flights, and he was an admiral later. So there you go. Mm-hmm. Well, a Commodore is like a junior admiral, and they, even in the eras where they quit saying Commodore, basically the first Pip admiral, it's kind of an honorary. We got into this during all the Commodore O mess. And maybe Kirk called someone Cal. Are you talking about Cal Strickland? What are you getting at there? the episode 2 question. Maybe episode 2 will suffer the thing I call the episode 2 problem. The first episode of a new series, awesome. The second one, meh. Well, when you had all the years of pilot making to sell the series, and even on Star Trek, they were sold already. The pilot didn't really sell the series like the way, well, The Cage and Strange New Worlds did. After that, every pilot on Star Trek was just an introduction, setting up the characters and getting all the exposition for you, or most of it. It didn't really sell because everything was pre-sold, right? As a syndication package that was pre-sold to stations, and UPN was begging for it for Enterprise and Voyager. So, and then Discovery on CBS All Access. So in the old days, you would have the kind of the letdown, and the second and third and fourth episodes would be written. If they got picked up, then they were written in kind of the shadow. And here's what we spent money on. Here's what we blew our time on. Here's what we had the luxury of a year and a half writing, like a motion picture. Now we got to get into the weekly grind, and we can fix a few things we didn't like from the pilot. But basically, now we got to get all these clunky new gears to fit together to go, and that's why that happens. In streaming times, that's not the case at all. The pilot is not a pilot to sell it. It's already pre-sold for 10 or 12 or 13 shows. The biggest thing is just meshing the gears, but you're doing it you're doing it months before shooting. You've got time to refine it. And even after you shoot it, you've got a year, maybe, to edit and even go back and do reshoots if you want to. So I think you have a lot less of that feeling. You also get into these things where, well, we're really going to call the first 2 hours our pilot, like Discovery literally was. So that's a concern. That's a paradigm that seems to be kind of outmoded now. Let's see. Okay. Oh, yeah, Salome Jens and the chase. I asked Ron back in the day if she was a preserver, which would be a thing, but not so much. Okay, looking for questions. The magics of Megas 2. Boy, okay. There you go. It's canon. It's canon. Oh yeah, the Dowd, the immortal beings that could, yes, shapes and disguises, who do die though eventually. Yes. The new Chapel is different. She's quirkier. I think Major would have loved her, and I think Major would have loved to have been quirky like that, because Major was quirky. Every once in a while, she got a moment to throw some side eye at McCoy or do a thing, just have a little tiny moment. And you didn't have to say, oh, the boss is letting his mistress get away with something. She really, really had it there. Number 1 is her most screen time, and she's trying to play the straight-laced, unemotional, glacial woman. Yeah. Wesley Crusher and Corey beamed away. What does his ship look like? What are you saying here, Stingray? Paramount Plus has been touting their Halo series exactly in the news more than Trek. Well, Halo's got the huge built-in audience. His parent analytics showed Halo overshadowing Trek. Yeah, of course, because it's hanging up here. Planning any more Trekland truck auctions? Oh, I have had them there. Were you it's been so long. I ran those. We moved and I was downsizing, and I had so much stuff, and I wanted to find a good home, and we did that for, I don't know, 2013, 14, 15, 16, 3 or 4 years. And then the real world started to settle down, and Portal came along, and I haven't got anything more planned. But if we move here in the next year or sometime, maybe, I may have a need to do that. I'll probably have more storage room, but we'll see. So stay tuned. But if you were you a Trekland trunkster? The page is still there. I occasionally put stuff on it. It had a good, good list of people. A lot of Sunday live auctions I did on Facebook. That was crazy. I did Trek live Sunday auctions from Will Rogers at times. Sometimes the Wi-Fi signal was pretty puny, but I'm glad to get out. A lot of my Okudagram collection is on the walls at a certain house in Las Vegas now. Let's see. Oh, we did that already. And thank you to you and to everybody else. Happy belated Mother's Day. Yay. Posted some things if you saw on the Instagram. Let's see. Shouldn't have been a BMAT. Should have been more of a watcher transport. Yeah. Well, what will Eagle Moss sell you if he doesn't have a ship now and then? Exactly. Eagle Moss could sell invisible ships. Powers that be always wanted to do a musical episode. Do I think there might still be a chance of getting a Trek equivalent of Once More with Feeling? There's always a chance. There's always a chance, especially as they keep pulling from theater ranks. We will see. Melanie, I remember those days. I remember we had a TV in our newsroom at the Transcript in Norman, and it always was on CNN, except for our managing editor and city editor had one soap opera. They would watch The Young and the Restless, and she watched. No, I'm sorry. They watched Days of Our Lives, and yes, Jonathan was on. What was the name of his Mad Scientist? Oh, dang. Anyway, when they announced the cast of Encounter at Farpoint, my city editor Karen said, "Oh, it's I forgot his name now, but it's the Mad Scientist in the basement." Yes, absolutely. And then he invented a time machine and got there. Yeah. He was also a crazy mad scientist on 13 episodes of Legend with Richard Dean Stanton. Not Richard Dean Stanton. I always say his name wrong. Harry Dean Anderson. No. But he certainly was. Let's just a jump to the left. Yeah. TPTB is the powers that be. Let's see. How are we doing on the chat here? How are we doing on the chat? Oh, thank you for crossing the streams here for me, Stephen. Sonic Screwdriver was introduced about the same time as Assignment Earth. It was a servo, by the way. Gary Seven called it a servo. Except originally it was just a screwdriver. And Assignment Earth had a sci-fi multi-tool first, if anyone who copied Trek. Yay. So take that. I've still wanted the Gary Seven series for ages. Now we can have Orla Brady be his. No, I guess not. No, that would be a supervisor. We could have, we can have Will be Gary Seven's traveler supervisor. So Mike Sussum quickly decided that Hoshi died on Tarsus during. Yeah, he might have consulted with Mike or something, but basically, yeah, he just threw a bunch of fun fan stuff together because they didn't think that was going to be on camera. Yes, I think I need to get out my interview with Mike from back in the day and air that out. I do. Oh, okay. Then on the other hand, you think that sounds like an astro. Let's light this candle. That's what one of them needs to say. Let's light this candle. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think either we give up on, that was the thing. See, the eugenics wars so far, the next test is the Bell riots. But that was the first test of, are we going to finally have to put Star Trek's prime universe, not our own? And I know a lot of you will say, well, it hasn't been that for ages. And there is no prime universe because of First Contact. And because I know. I try to go for the simple because I don't like a headache. And I thought Greg Cox's solution there was pretty slick. It was a behind the scenes war. Yep. You know why? Because, the Doctor Who doctors are old men with teen younger folk to do some of the actiony stuff. The formula of a non-geezer doctor and one plucky young woman companion came later, too. True. It's hard to call a guy in a suit a geezer, though, if it was Gary Seven. Yeah. Did she fast forward through anything? There was a lot of Enterprise and Discovery she fast forwarded through. Watch the introduction, then zip through to look for interesting guest stars, and then watch the last 5 minutes. The darker it got, or the more violent it got, the more she fast forwarded through it. Exactly. That is why they made Decker a Commodore. Exactly. But Commodores could be in command of ships, or they could be back like a fleet. And a fleet captain was slightly below a Commodore, and we got into that too, about what was what. The Magics of Megas 2 is the most metal of all Star Trek. Now that's that's an interesting take, Stephen. Okay. Very true. Gorns and Tholians appeared in Enterprise, and the Gorn was it was in the mirror universe, and nothing there was no person, nothing connected back to the Prime. Remember? It was all mirror universe Gorns, so there was no bridge back to. It was awesome to see them, although I did not like the take. I remember Dan Curry specifically saying we couldn't make that work. Well, they've made it work since. But even in CG, what really? They wanted to be more dino. And you can have species diversity, but I hope if and when we see Gorns on Strange New Worlds, which technically we shouldn't, but anyway, unless it's a whole like Borg Ferengi thing. It was cool to see the Tholians too. But yeah, we had the universal barrier there between them. Not a full bore colonel. Colonel is a military rank, not a naval air forcey rank. I mean, not a naval rank. So Starfleet uses naval ranks, and there is no colonel in the Navy. So I'm confused, Melanie. You mean an admiral? Yeah, Kirk was on the bottom. You work your way up, just like producers. You work your way up. Associate producer, co-producer, no, associate producer, co-producer, consulting producer, supervising producer, co-supervising. Yeah. Anyway, co's are below, by the way. A co-executive producer is below an executive producer. It doesn't just mean that there are people sharing the title. Just so you know. Oh, bye, Linda. You got to fly. Okay. Harry Dean Anderson. I know. I was kind of kidding a little bit there. Richard Dean MacGyver Anderson. Yeah. Eugene Bradford. Okay. Missed that Trek. Yes. Okay. Oh no, no, it wouldn't have been a better choice. Laura Mipson. No, I think I'm totally happy, totally delighted. Look, the damn show was dying. We didn't know where the next Star Trek would be. Give us a little glimmer of hope back then, okay? Huh? Something that's cool. Yeah. Hmm. Let us see here. Hi, Dwight. It's an alternative history anyway from the start of them. Oh, Dwight, don't take that away from me. Don't take my teenhood away from me. Please. Please. I know it's World War III and all. That's what I've been holding out for. I'd like to get to the fun stuff without the whole Bell riots and World War III part. I know, I know, I know. Why are we fussing over this detail anyway? Because what are you not a Star Trek fan? You can't be a Star Trek fan if you don't care about the background continuity. That's my gate right there, and I'm going to live by it and die by it. That's my gate, and I'm keeping it. Uh, is this some European thing, Captain Calvin? Some European thing? Captain Robert T. Norad from the Star Trek parody Highline. Did I miss this? Was it recent and I just slept through it? Okay, I'll have to look that up then. Very good. Thank you, sir, since you put a time frame to it. Okay, we've got our Doctor Who overlap discussion going on. Oh, thank you, Eugene. Yes, Eugene. Yes, Eugene. I can see my city editor turning around going, that's Eugene. How did Eugene get into Star Trek? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I didn't know his last name was Bradford, so I've learned something new today. Yay. And we'll wrap that one up that Highlander was a parody in the 90s in what country? Let's see. Absolutely. In fact, it's fun to do this with Perry Mason, with the original series people, and Murder She Wrote and Magnum PI. It's fun to see Star Trek people on those, on the 80s, whatever era it is. It's fun to see the 80s things. Well, guess what, kiddos? I think we're at the end of the chat, the real end of the chat. So thanks for hanging out again today. Don't forget, I'm looking forward, as someone said, to seeing, maybe it was Anne Marie talking about seeing the photos from the social media will be full of photos from these away mission folks. So they're having a lot of fun. And for a lot of them, it's probably the first time they've even conceived of something. So if the idea tickles your fancy, again, we've got the day tour. If you're going to Vegas at the end, Trek Vegas at the end of August on Con Eve, Wednesday, August 24th, you can jump in this one day. It's basically, we'll leave at 7 in the morning because it's an hour there and we want to beat the heat as much as we can and be back around 2. We'll go out to where Kirk died in Generations, the Valley of Fire. That's at geeknationtours.com is where to find out about that. And also, Geek Nation Tours is where you can read up on the West Coast Away mission next July, year from July, in fact. 10 days, LA and San Fran, and with these actor stars, behind the scenes folks, and more to be announced. Meanwhile, I've got my own Roddenberry Life Tour in August. The page is up August 20th and 21st. It's 2 days. It's the tour. The headquarters hotel is the Hollywood Roosevelt. I've got to fix the way to do that, but it's $100 off if you use the rate. Or you don't have to stay there. You can stay wherever and just meet us there at the beginning when the bus tours. It's a small group unless it explodes, but so far I have I have 4 of the 6 I need. So think about that as well. And of course, I can help you out with a Trek anytime you're in LA for business or pleasure and you got a spare day. Treklandtreks.com. Check that out. Otherwise, I just want to remind everybody, Trek Files is up. It's a lovely piece this week with Fran Taylor from Sci-Fi Sisters and a memo from Gene during Next Generation about watch how our casting is not being as diverse as we could be because we're using too many humans. Otherwise, gang, once again, a thank you to all of our Patreonos. There's a new one. Our Patreons, our TTLers, and our live wires. And you can jump into for $5 or $10 a month over there if you're watching out. Boom. Let's end with a clean slate. Patreon.com/Trekland Live. Yeah, and as always, I'm Larry Nemechek on Twitter. Larry Nemechek's Trekland on YouTube. Please go over and subscribe if you're not there already. And Larry Nemechek Trekland, same thing on Facebook and Instagram. A lot of fun stuff on Instagram. So that's going to do it for me. Portal47.net. If you do want to jump in and check out the portal. Boy, things are just going sky high. We can get back to only having one series to keep up with, but no massive running arc story. Chapters. Actual standalone episodes for once. So we're going to see how this unfolds. People are excited. Those who have seen the first 5 already on the screen are excited, and episode 2 is something else too. We'll be talking about all of that and maybe some things from the metaverse of Star Trek you did not know about. I've had 1 or 2 ideas already. We will get there. Until next Tuesday, or until maybe anyone in the chat today I'm seeing this week. I don't know. I don't think so. They're all too busy having a hangout, the ones who are on town already. I will see them tonight, and I will hopefully see you next week at this time, if not sooner. Portal is not back in session until next week as well, when we've got the incredible Kirk Thatcher as our delayed April telebriefing guest night guest. Till then, everybody, please, once again, stay healthy. Do all the things. Really. There are cases spiking all over the place. It may not be as big. One of my best friends got COVID last week, and he's had it's like a week-long sinus infection. And I hope that's all it is once it's all said and done. Do all the things. Stay woke. Check your sources. Don't be sucked in by the trolls. Be alert to legit information once you figure out that they're not a ghost. And trek well, everybody.